All right. I had you turn to Exodus chapter 1. We're not at the point yet where I'm going to have you stand, if you will, and if you're able. But we've been back in Florida now for 5.5 years. That's pretty wild. It seems like it's flown by. And then when I kind of look at that time analytically, it seems like, yeah, we went through some stuff. We've been through pandemics and the death of parents, and we've walked through many of those things with you as a congregation. So maybe it is more than 5.5 years, at least in our understanding. Before we came back home to Tampa, which is both where Michelle and I were raised, we lived 15 years in Northern California. If you've been to Southern California, Northern California is quite a bit different. We lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, particularly the North Bay area. And one of the great things that we got to enjoy is that we got to go to Yosemite National Park. Has anybody ever been to Yosemite National Park? Yeah, pretty great, isn't it? When you go through, and I hope everybody does. Some of you would say, well, I'm not a nature person. Even if you're not a nature person per se, there's two places you need to go. You need to go to Alaska, and you need to go to Yosemite National Park. And when you go through Yosemite National Park through the southern entrance, you go through kind of a winding road, and it's very foresty, and it's very beautiful. And then you come to a clearing, and you can park your car, and this is the Yosemite Valley. And I want to tell you, I've stood in some amazing places, but this is absolutely mind-blowing. I would still be standing there if we didn't have stuff to do. It's absolutely incredible. As you stand there at the scenic overlook, you get El Capitan to the left, you get Half Dome in the back, and then you get all of these falls, Bridal Veil Falls and Yosemite Falls. And what's awesome is when you look at the top of those trees, those are all giant sequoia trees, and it looks like a lawn in front of you. These monstrous trees. So if you ever get a chance to go to Yosemite, go to Yosemite. This week, I read about another national park, maybe more of you have been to Yosemite, not Yosemite, but Yellowstone National Park. Anybody been to Yellowstone? Okay, I think more of you have been to Yellowstone. And what I read and I thought was interesting, kind of being a news junkie, is that there have been a rash of bison attacks there. That people are getting way too close to the bison. I think the next photo maybe is the one that kind of shows it. But yeah, the cars are getting way too close to the bison. And so there's warnings and there's postings all over the place. Do not approach the bison. Matter of fact, they're saying stay 25 yards away from bison, the length of 2 school buses. In the case of carnivores, at least 100 yards. If you cannot get back to your vehicle in 1.5 seconds, don't exit your vehicle. Take a nice picture, look out your window and take a nice selfie with a bison. But there's a rash of these. And it's a reminder, this rash, is that there needs to be a healthy respect and a healthy fear that is involved with wild animals. Sometimes we hear of those attacks, don't we? Man, the family dog suddenly just kind of loses its mind and something really, really bad happens. Or somebody is like, man, this is the most awesome chimpanzee, and look at it, it wears a hat and smokes a cigar, and then it like rips a face off or something, you know? And it's like, oh my gosh, I forgot. It's actually an animal. And animals have animal brains, and so we always need to have a healthy fear of nature. We can appreciate that with the animal kingdom. We can appreciate that with weather. And we just kind of always need to have a respect going on for it. How many of you who went through some of the hurricanes say, I've got a new respect for hurricanes? And so there needs to be a healthy respect, but let me put it this way, a healthy fear. Sometimes things can get dangerous when we lose a healthy fear spiritually. Those of you who are students of the Bible, and I know many here at New Beginnings are, in the 66 books of the Bible, we see not a posting everywhere, beware of the bison, but we see other postings from the Old Testament well into the New Testament. And the postings are this, but oftentimes we ignore those postings and our lives get in trouble spiritually. And that posting is fear God. Fear God. Fearing God is incredibly important. Fearing God is what the whole thing is about. At the very center of all of it is fearing God. And some of you, when you hear the word fear, you're thinking phobia, and that's that cowering thing, and you think of the worst possible definition of what that fear looks like. But the fear we're talking about right now, the fearing of God, is an awe. It's a reverence. It's a continual reminder that in this relationship that we all are invited into with God, that one of us is God Almighty and the other one isn't. It's a continuous reminder that one of us is creator and the other that creature. That God is God. That God deserves our reverence. God deserves our awe. God deserves your wonder today. And yet sometimes we fall into a couple of traps. Sometimes we, and I kind of blame myself as clergy, as I kind of associate in the fraternity of that, is sometimes we just want you to chum up with God so much that we just kind of make him like a frat brother or something. You know, he's a friend, right? Scripture says that God was a friend with Abraham, and he was a friend with Moses, and they talked together face to face. We know that Jesus was accused of being a friend of sinners. And sometimes we just want to, just for you to like him as well, and to see this very, very congenial side that he's kind of like that guy you invite over to watch a football game and you share a bowl of nachos with. And sometimes we can kind of run that risk of making him too ordinary, when at the end of the day, he is God. He is it. He is all. He is everything. He is ultimate. Just by definition, ultimate can only be one thing. There can only be one ultimate thing, right? You can't have a multiplicity of ultimates. And so what is the ultimate for you? God is to be the absolute ultimate, and we are to fear him every single day. It ought to be the mentality that we chronically live in this place of fearing God. Do you fear him today? See, fearing God is essential to pleasing and glorifying God. But again, Houston, we have a problem. Too many of us lose a healthy fear. Just as we can run the risk of compromising a certain fear when it comes to wildlife and all these other things, we need to have a healthy fear. And God calls us not to a dysfunctional fear, but God calls us to a healthy spiritual fear. I love this definition of what it means to fear God. It just kind of resonates with me in such a profound way. It's rejoicing and trembling. We like the rejoicing part, right? I watched you guys. I listened to you guys. I was back there changing from wet clothes into this, and I'm listening to you guys worshiping, and this church loves to rejoice. Man, I'm so grateful that you do. But are you in here also with a certain degree of trembling? Do you recognize who you're singing to? Did you come in here today kind of just like, yeah, I have to go to church? Or did you come in here with I get to go to church? Did you come in here with a holy fear today? Rejoicing, man, I can't wait to worship God. But also simultaneously, the piston in your engine of trembling. This is the God of the universe. This is the only God. And I need to revere him. And I need to uphold him. And I need to stand in absolute awe of him. And see, when we lose that healthy fear, when we ignore all those fear God posts, what happens? We get ourselves in a place. Why all these attacks? And the truth of the matter is that we've ignored the postings. See, the more we fear God, the less we fear people. The less we fear people. Some of us by nature are people pleasers. I like to say yes more than I say no. Some of y'all are just mean-spirited. You just like to say no. You default to no. You need to repent of that. I like to make people happy. Any other people, right? I like to say yes, if I could say yes. How many of you know yes? Everybody loves you when you say yes. How many of you know that no is a power word? If I say yes to you, oh, that's Steve, man. Yeah, boy, I love him. He always tells me yes. Then that one time I say no, that locates the heart, doesn't it? No's a power word. And I'm a pleaser by nature. In other words, I want to make you happy, and I want to make you happy. And if I can make you happy, of course I want to do that. I want to make you happy, but sometimes we run the risk, and let's I say trespass that line where I fear you more than I fear God. And that catches up with you because you can't fear both. I can't fear you and I can't fear God simultaneously. Why? Because who you fear controls you. Who you fear controls you. So who do you fear? Who do you fear the most? In your rejoicing, who are you trembling before? See, fearing God is this esteem that he deserves. Fearing God is placing his words above your theories, his renown above your reputation. That your ambassadorship of Christ is continuing to grow and be refined. It's the seriousness of sin and understanding that and confronting it instead of petting it. It's submission and obedience, that they're not just great things, but they're the only thing. See, the fear of God is not just being afraid of him. It's afraid of being away from him. And through Jesus Christ, you don't have to be away from him. Again, God is everything. God is the ultimate. King Solomon knew this not too long ago in our men's study. Rick Rose does a great job. Every Tuesday morning at 6:45, you guys, you're all invited. You can Zoom in, several guys do, or you can come in person as I occasionally do. We recently went through the book of Ecclesiastes, Rick. Rick did a great job with that. And we know Ecclesiastes was written by King Solomon. King Solomon never had to say no to anything, did he? And he didn't. Got his hand slapped a few times on that one, had a lot of regrets along the way because he was the king. And you don't say no to the king. And so he pursued every vice. He went down every road he wanted to, every hedonistic way and pathway. And at the end of all of that, 6 or 12 chapters of Ecclesiastes, he comes to the very end of that amazing book, and he says this: "Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter." Just an E.F. Hutton moment. This is it. I've lived this long life. I've experienced everything that life has to throw at you. This is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of mankind. That's it. Fear God, keep his commandments. Yeah, but life is fear God, keep his commandments. Well, it's so confusing, this life. Fear God, keep his commandments. Not just on Sunday at 10:30 when it seems like fearing God is kind of the thing to do in this space, but every single day living a lifestyle of fearing God. That before your feet swing over the side of the bed in the morning, you already are aware that this amazing God has kept you alive all night long, that he loves you, that he has not only said that he loves you, but he has proven that he loves you by sending his son Jesus to the cross. He loves you, guys. And so we stand in awe of him, that he did for us something we could never, ever, ever in a million lifetimes we could ever do. But again, sometimes we fear people more than we fear God. We fear men so much because we, fear God so little. And that's a problem. What does it mean to fear man? To fear other people more than you fear God? See, to fear man is to elevate someone else's influence over, God's authority in God's word. It's ignoring the eternal ramifications and consequences over the temporary and the uncomfortable ones. Proverbs 29 and verse 25 says, "Fear of man will prove to be a snare. Whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe." Jesus said it the best. He always did, didn't he? He said, "Don't be afraid of the one that can only kill the body. Be afraid of the one that can destroy the body and then throw your soul into hell." Right? Now, we need to have reverence for people in authority, people in government, people who wear badges. I met a new guy. He came to the drive-in this morning, and he was in the military. He had delivered food. Where's my son Sam? Sam, you got food delivered to you this week. You invited that guy, and he came to drive-in service today. Yeah. It was awesome. Here was a guy who was in authority, and thank you for your service. Thank you for all that you did. There are people that we need to have great respect for, that we need to have a holy reverence for. But what we're talking about is when we cross that line and we fear them more. Jesus said, don't be afraid of that. What's the worst thing they can do to you? They can take your life. Not very pleasant. Homicide never is. But be afraid of the one who not only can take your life, but condemn your soul as well. To fear man, according to the proverbial writer, it is a snare, it is a trap. And here's what I know about fearing God. Though it's the only way we can please him. Listen, it will be tested. It will be tested. It's easy for us on a Sunday morning after the band is played and, to say, of course I fear God. Are you kidding me? Of course I fear God. But the real litmus test is tomorrow morning and Wednesday evening, and as you go about life, are you still fearing God? Are you still in awe of who he really, really is? It's always going to be tested. Now, we could look at some great examples. Abraham. Go, Abraham, and sacrifice your only son, Isaac. Wow, how many of you would say, boy, that was a test? Or we could look at Daniel, another book that we studied not too long ago, and boy, it's just filled with all kinds of tests of whether we really fear God or not. But one of my favorite examples is the text that I have for you today. If you're a student of the Word, as Exodus chapter 1 begins, you know that there's a new sheriff in town, a new Pharaoh, a new king of Egypt. We read about Joseph. Matter of fact, I referred to him in last week's sermon, and we read about Joseph of the Old Testament there in Genesis chapters 37 through 50. But as the next chapter, which chronologically would be Exodus chapter 1, that there's a new Pharaoh who knew nothing about Joseph. I don't care about Joseph. I don't care what he did. He's history. He's history. All I know is there's a bunch of these Israelites that live here. And boy, they are some fertile myrtles, man. They're just growing like crazy, and they're the fastest growing demographic here in Egypt land. And man, if they turned on us, it would be lights out for us. Or even worse, if they join arms with our enemies, we are absolute charcoal briquettes on the ground, man. And so we need to stop all of this multiplication that seems to be coming out of Goshen, where they had settled. And with that setup, I would love for you, if you can and if you're able, to stand with me right now. We're going to read Exodus 1:15 through 21. We're talking about fearing the Lord. Verse 15. Read it. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah. Stop right there. Who wants the name Puah? Sorry. Start again. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose name were Shiphrah and Puah, when you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it's a girl, let her live. The midwives, however, what? The midwives, however, what? The midwives, however, what? Feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, "Why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live?" The midwives answered Pharaoh, "Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They're vigorous, and they give birth before the midwives arrive." So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives what? Because the midwives what? He gave them families of their own. God bless you. God bless you. What great examples. 2 Hebrew midwives. Trained, diligent, busy. Here, the Pharaoh calls them into his presence. How intimidating was that? And he gives them these horrible instructions that when you do what you are trained to do, this is what I want you to do. What do you do? It's the most powerful man in existence. You never thought you'd have an audience when somebody that powerful. You're busy scurrying around Goshen land, and boy, there somebody is in labor. Well, you go to that person, and I'll go to this person over here, and they're running around and scurrying around, and suddenly you have an audience with the most powerful personality in the known world at that time. Somebody who views himself and his people view him as a living God. He said, and when they're giving birth, this is what you're to do. We don't need to go through it all. We don't need to talk about it in vivid instruction. All we need to know is that there was a clear choice right now. Do I fear man, i.e. Pharaoh, or do we fear God? And they made a decision. Listen, your fear of God will always be tested. Again, it's easy to say on a Sunday morning between 10:30 and 11:30 or so in a church service in a space like this. But that decision and that test will happen throughout the week. And lest I say, for each one of you. And it's not going to come in such a dramatic way as it was with these folks or with Abraham on Mount Moriah or with Daniel and with his friends in Babylon. It'll come in more subtle ways. Do you really believe what you believe? Don't we all want to fit in? Real people, don't we all want to belong? Nobody likes to be held at arm's distance. And so, you know what? I can be gregarious and zealous in a space like this, but I need to be more measured. And at the end of the day, the real question is, do I fear people more than I fear God? See, Jesus said, if you're ashamed of me before people, I'm going to be ashamed of you before my Father in heaven. Anybody want to roll with that? But if you're unashamed of me, I'll be unashamed of you. We have a choice. And that choice, again, will come in subtle ways. And it comes in very, very spontaneous ways. It's not something you're going to be able to prepare for. It's not like an examination you get to study for. Oftentimes, it's a pop quiz. And you're going to have to make a decision. Who do I fear? Who do I tremble before? And if I'm not trembling, why aren't I trembling? Because at one time I trembled. Reminds me of the granddaughter who comes home from a very lively worship service, goes to her elderly grandfather, and she says, "Granddad, what a great church." He said, "Oh, tell me about it." She said, "Oh, we sang, Grandpa." And Grandpa said, "Oh, singing's good. Keep on singing." He said, "Oh, we danced a little bit, Grandpa." Grandpa said, "Oh, dancing's good. Keep on dancing." We jumped, Grandpa. "Oh, honey, jumping's good. But when you land, walk straight." It's important that the fear of God continues to remind us, I need to walk straight. I need to walk straight because I love him so much, because I recognize in this relationship, one of us is God Almighty and one of us is not. And I need to live every single day in the shadow of that absolute reality. And here's where the problem is if I'm trying to somehow please people and please God at the same time, it just doesn't work. The Apostle Paul said it great in Galatians 1 and 10. He says, "Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ." Paul said, I made a decision. I can't truly follow Jesus Christ if I'm somehow trying to please God wholeheartedly and trying to please people wholeheartedly. Here's what I know about chronic people pleasers. You guys are exhausted. You wear it. I don't have to ask you, you wear it. It's the way you carry yourself. Man, I'm running around here and I got to put out this fire, and oh my gosh, you're like a fireman. I got to put out this fire, and I got invited to this, and I can't say no to them, and I got to make them happy, and then there's this thing, and a little, she's got this appointment, and what if I miss that? Oh my gosh, she's not going to be able to, get into Harvard, and I've got to. You're tired. You're exhausted. You're trying to please people, and you're trying to please God, and you're losing orientation here, and you're disoriented. And Paul's saying, man, I can't be a servant of God and just please all these people. I've got to make up my mind. Who do I fear most? Who do I fear most? And friends, I believe that same question is ours today. Who do you fear? Who do you fear most? Whose approval do you really want? Do you want to hear, well done, from a friend? Feels nice. Nice to be appreciated, right? Or does anybody want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant? Enter into the joy of your salvation. Guys, I'm living for those words. I'm living to hear those words, and there's only one who can say those words. And someday he's going to say that. And the only way I'm going to miss that is if I'm just a spiritual fireman trying to put out everybody's problems and not being able to say no to anybody. Fearing God is getting our act together. Fearing God is getting prioritized the way we need to be prioritized. Because God is God. God is transcendent, and God is worthy of our fear, of absolute rejoicing and trembling. So strive to fear him. Strive to fear him every single day. Rejoice and tremble every single day. Why? Because fearing God is absolutely essential to pleasing and glorifying him. Someone might ask, Steve, how do I know if I'm really fearing God? Simple answer, obedience. 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 Jesus said in John 14, if you love me, you keep my commands. If you really love me, if you really fear me, keep my commands. Keep my commands. Some of us are, as I mentioned, we're exhausted because we're upside down and we've been fearing people. That'll wear you out. That'll wear you out. I was just reading devotionally yesterday where even Moses himself had to have an intervention. His father-in-law, Jethro, pulled him aside and said, I've been watching you from morning till night. You're judging everything here. And you never, ever, ever get to the end of it. All these people want your time. All these people want your attention. You're going to wear yourself out, Moses. And so you need to pick some people. You need to delegate some things and preserve your life. You can wear yourself out trying to please people, fearing the opinion of others more than you fear the evaluation of God himself. That's why I love what Jesus said in Matthew 11. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. See, Jesus isn't just a shepherd. Jesus is the good shepherd. A good shepherd of the sheep knows when it's time to drive the sheep, but a good shepherd also knows now it's time for them to settle down in green grass beside still waters. Maybe for some of you who've been running around trying to please people, maybe you're just worn out. Or as we say in the South, you're tarred. Some of you are tarred. And Jesus says, come to me. Come to me. I know you. I love you. I'm concerned about you. You've been running your engine with the needle in the red for too long, trying to make everybody in your life happy. It's a snare. We just read it. It's a snare. It's a trap. But we fear God, and we keep His commandments. And that needs to be the priority that we maintain. So maybe I'm speaking to somebody today, and you just need to come to Jesus. We all do. Come to me. Come to me. I'll give you rest. Maybe there's some of you, and you never have taken the step that our sisters took today. You've never been baptized. We're always ready to do that, by the way. We're always. Well, what if I, people see me with my hair all wet and messed up? How many know Jesus got his hair messed up for you? Yeah. Well, you know what? I don't want to get my seats in my car wet. We got some plastic bags back in the kitchen. The latest in car seat protection technology. We'll give you 3 of them if you want. It's no big deal. Maybe for somebody today, I need to get baptized. I need to make things right. I need to have a clear conscience towards the Lord. Maybe you're looking for a church. I know of one. It's filled with highly imperfect people, especially, and it starts with the senior pastor. But we're a family. We love each other. We're growing. We don't always see eye to eye, but we love each other. We'll work it out. He's worth it. Whatever the Lord is doing, maybe you need prayer today. Maybe somebody's on your heart today. It's like, man, I need to make sure somebody's praying for them. I'm praying. I need somebody else to pray. I want to draw attention to some of my friends. This is my father-in-law. This is Doodad, Johnny. You can call him Doodad. This is Rick Rose. Rick would love to pray with you. I'd love to pray with you. Whatever God's putting on your heart, let's do it. Faith is always fashionable at new beginnings. What if? What ifs will keep you stuck to the pew. What if I go up, then everybody in the room will think, what a sinner I am. Welcome to the club. We're all messed up. None of us have it together. Well, you know what? Once I get it together, then I'm going to respond. You can't get it together without Jesus. Once I'm good enough, you'll never be good enough. Come to Jesus. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened. I'll give you rest. I know what you need, and I got it. Why don't we do that? Why don't we flex our faith muscles as we stand together and we sing together?